Now at 5 and streaming on crossroadstoday.com, Austin police believe a convicted murderer is responsible for 10 other killings.
In Victoria County, this man found guilty of sex crimes involving a child.
And the House approves a bill to raise the nation's debt ceiling while cutting some government spending over the next 2 years.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Warm and humid is the story for us, but also today's the start of the Atlantic hurricane season, and we may have something brewing out there, so we'll have the latest for you coming up.
A volunteer group that feeds the homeless in Houston hit with 29 police citations. You're watching 25 News Now at 5. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here. I'm James Munoz.
And I'm Karina Garcia. A grand jury indicted Emiliano Rosa Rosales of Ganado on charges of aggravated sexual assault with a child and indecency with a child back in July 2021. His trial began Wednesday. The state and defense have both rested. Today, the 35-year-old was found guilty and sentenced to 40 years and 20 years respectively. The sentences were stacked. A known convicted killer in Austin is back in jail after police say he confessed to murdering his roommate. 62-year-old Rosa's criminal history spans more than 40 years.
Now the suspected serial killer faces 2 new murder charges, and police are looking into whether he could be connected to other cold cases.
62-year-old Raul Mesa was convicted of killing an 8-year-old girl in Austin in 1982. He was sentenced to 30 years in prison, but only served 11. On Monday, he was taken into custody after authorities say he called them and confessed to killing his roommate and another woman.
28 returns to a Raul Mesa Jr. at that address.
Mesa's roommate, retired parole officer Jesse Fraga, was found stabbed to death in his home north of Austin more than a week ago. The U.S. Marshals were urgently looking for Mesa, and while on the run, they say Mesa called detectives and detailed how he allegedly murdered his 80-year-old roommate. Detectives say Mesa also admitted to killing 65-year-old Gloria Lofton 4 years ago. Lofton was a beloved mother and grandmother. DNA at her home linking investigators to Mesa.
Mr. Mesa said he was ready and prepared to kill again, and he was looking forward to it.
Mesa's early release from prison for killing 8-year-old Kendra Page in the 80s prompted protests in Austin.
We don't want him in our neighborhood!
Kendra's older sister sharing with ABC News how they fought for years to keep Mesa in jail.
Emotional, anger, hate, feeling sorry for other families that have to go through this.
Austin police say there are between 8 to 10 cold cases that fit similar circumstances that could possibly link Mesa as the killer. Mesa is currently booked in jail awaiting a court date. Melissa Adan, ABC News, Los Angeles.
Heavy rainfall caused flash flooding in parts of Texas and Canyon. The devastation caused by mudslides, rock falls, and flash flooding has caused leaders to cancel the 17th annual upcoming 24 Hours in the Canyon event. They say the situation will not be fixable before the weekend. Several roads were closed due to flooding. Experts say additional rainfall up to an inch are possible in that area.
Let's check in with Chief Meteorologist Mac Perez. Mac, the best time to go for a walk tonight?
Oh, about midnight, because our low is only going to be about 74, 75. So yeah, it's getting to be very summer-like, and so you have to choose your work hours properly. Right now, hardly a shower in the sky. They're being picked up by radar, but that's mostly moisture in the higher elevations. Of course, the big story is in the Gulf of Mexico. There's something called Tropical Depression 2. We'll talk about that in a moment. Stay tuned.
Mac, thank you. The Democratic and Republican leaders in the Senate are pushing to fast-track the debt ceiling legislation that passed overwhelmingly in the House last night with bipartisan support.
But with any individual senator available or able to block swift passage, unhappy conservative and progressive members could delay the bill.
The U.S. Senate is racing against time to approve the House-passed bill President Joe Biden and Speaker Kevin McCarthy negotiated to raise the debt ceiling. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen has projected a June 5th deadline for the nation to run out of money to pay its bills, which would likely result in a disaster for the U.S. and global economies.
No good reason to bring this process down to the wire.
In a rare show of unity on Capitol Hill, both Senate leaders are urging their members to promptly pass the bill that would avert the current debt ceiling crisis and suspend the borrowing cap until January 2025.
The Senate cannot afford to neglect its obligation to America's men and women in uniform.
Any senator can slow passage of this bill, and already some have proposed amendments, while some progressive members oppose the added work requirements for food stamp recipients aged 50 to 54.
This debt ceiling agreement will cut programs for some of the most vulnerable people in America.
Some conservative Republicans are demanding more defense spending.
We'll be here to Tuesday until I get commitments that we're going to rectify some of these problems.
Yeas are 314, the nays are 117.
Speaker McCarthy and his Democratic counterpart hailing the overwhelming passage of the compromise bill in the House, despite dozens of their members voting no.
This is the biggest cut and savings this Congress has ever voted for.
We had an obligation, a responsibility to avoid a catastrophic default.
Senate leadership wants to pass this debt ceiling bill either today or tomorrow, and President Biden has vowed to sign it immediately to avert a potentially catastrophic default. Em Nguyen, ABC News, Washington.
Of the 71 Republicans who voted against the debt ceiling bill was Congressman Michael Cloud. In a Facebook post, Cloud says he voted against the bill because he believes it fails to achieve the goal of fixing the nation's fiscal troubles. Instead, the bill would continue to spend trillions of taxpayer dollars while, quote, accepting empty promises and fake commitments, unquote. He claims the only way to fix the problem is to make real spending reforms to bring down the nation's debt and preserve its economy. And so this brings us to your viewer poll. Scan that QR code on your screen to vote now. The question is, do you agree with Congressman Cloud's reasons for voting against the debt ceiling bill? Yes or no? We want to hear from you. Come to crossroadstoday.com/vote to take part, and we will have an update on 25 News Now at 6. And we go to Houston now, where a volunteer group that feeds the homeless is in a battle with the city.
Yeah, Food Not Bombs has served the homeless population since 1994 and says it has no plans to relocate despite getting 29 tickets from police.
It's almost like a deck of cards over here.
Citations from the city are expected at this point. Since March 1st, volunteers from Food Not Bombs have gotten a collective 29 tickets from HPD.
It's not that I'm volunteering to get the ticket. It's just I'm here, I'm going to serve, and if that means I get a ticket for serving the people who are hungry, then I'm willing to do so.
4 nights a week, the volunteer group Food Not Bombs is outside the Houston Public Library on McKinney in downtown, across from City Hall, feeding the homeless. But over the last 3 months, they've been in a standoff with the city. Back in 2012, under former Mayor Anise Parker, an ordinance was enacted that required groups to get written permission from a property owner to conduct a food service event on the premise. That was not being enforced against Food Not Bombs until 3 months ago. Cherie Dorr, a volunteer, says she's not heard of any other groups that are being cited currently.
The mayor is saying that he's going to continue this process because he wants to take back the public library. We don't serve until 7:30, and this library is already closed by then.
In a statement, the city of Houston says, quote, recently there has been an increase in the number of threats and violent incidents directed at visitors and employees coming to the Houston Public Library downtown. Parents and families have expressed no longer feeling comfortable visiting the library or holding special events. The city asked the group to hold their distributions at a Houston police building on the other side of Interstate 45.
For him to push that information about the homeless in the library, it's not fair, and it adds a stereotype that we just do not like.
The consensus among the volunteers is that they're staying put and will continue to take the tickets. They're asking for jury trials on their citations. The first trial is currently set for July.
So here we are using a lot of time, resources, money, tax money and stuff like that being used towards this when it's not necessary.
Dorr says HPD Chief Troy Finner did give them a heads up that they would be ticketed before it started, but they haven't heard from city leaders again.
So the organization believes moving to another location would prohibit some people who are disabled from getting meals. An Oath Keepers member who took part in the January 6 Capitol attack sentenced to more than 4 years in prison for seditious conspiracy. Roberto Minuta was part of Roger Stone's security detail on January 6 before joining the riot at the Capitol. Prosecutors described him as one of Oath Keepers leader Stuart Rhodes' most trusted men. Prosecutors say he wasn't initially at the Capitol, but sped over in a golf cart when he learned of the breach. They say once inside, he joined a crowd pushing against police. The Victoria ISD received a meal program through the government. It closes at 6 p.m. today, so one more hour to get out there. Students can get breakfast and lunch for free. The Victoria ISD's Child Nutrition Department oversees the program to ensure all children 18 years and younger have access to food over the summer. It's a big issue. Just drop by Allo Elementary right now, each Monday and Thursday from 4 to 6 p.m. For more on today's news stories, come to crossroadstoday.com. Read about shigellosis. It's an outbreak in Lavaca County. That's under news. Stay with us. Straight ahead on 25 News Now at 5. 3 people were killed in overnight strikes in Kyiv, including a child.
Also ahead, 3 people remain unaccounted for after a building partially collapsed in Iowa.
25 News Now brings you Storm Prep 2023. Your first warned storm team will take us through this year's hurricane predictions. Chief Meteorologist Mac Perez speaks with descendants of Indianola, a town that was wiped out from back-to-back hurricanes. Adarius McCormick explains just how simple evacuating really is. June 5th on KAVU TV at 6:30 p.m. Storm Prep 2023. Stream it live or on demand on Crossroads Today Plus. View it and our Crossroads Today YouTube page.
Three people were killed in an overnight strike in Kyiv, including a child. Ukraine's national police said a 9-year-old girl, her 34-year-old mother, and a 33-year-old woman were killed. 12 others were hurt. Kyiv City Military Administration head said the early Thursday morning strikes on Kyiv were from ground-based tactical missile systems. He said preliminary information shows cruise and ballistic missiles were used and that the number and the type will be determined by the Ukrainian Air Force. Thousands of people across Florida are protesting the state's new anti-immigration legislation. The new law, which goes into effect July 1st, will require businesses employing more than 25 people to use E-Verify. That's a federal system that checks immigration status. Republican Governor Ron DeSantis said the law was meant to encourage businesses to hire citizens and legal immigrants. In response, the National Hispanic Rights Group LULAC urged immigrants not to travel to Florida.
3 people are still unaccounted for after a 6-story apartment building partially collapsed in Davenport, Iowa. It happened Sunday. Investigators say the apartment belonging to one of the missing individuals was located in the collapsed portion of the building. Authorities previously revealed 2 other men remained unaccounted for. Police reported 5 people were unaccounted for, but later said 2 of those were now safe.
We still had a third unaccountable that we're working with the VA. His name is Daniel Prian, 122462. His apartment was also related to the area where we had the collapse in the building. Right now, we don't have any family members. We're working on points of contact for our protocol for these individuals. They are entered in our national database as missing persons.
Authorities are looking at whether rescuers can safely continue to search for the missing residents before they demolish the structure. The owner of the building was cited for failing to maintain the structure in a safe and structurally sound condition. The transition from school to summer break can be exciting for most people, but for others, that change can be hard.
It can also be overwhelming for the entire family, but there are ways to cope with this transition.
From the classroom to the living room, this time of year can bring a whole host of feelings.
Some might be excited about the end of the school year and starting summer. Others might be a little uneasy. Some might be sad. And all of it's completely okay and normal.
Licensed therapist Jody Baumstein says to ask children open-ended questions, listen to what they have to say, help kids name their feelings, and then validate what they feel. In any time of change, Baumstein says keeping a routine is key. That includes healthy eating habits, staying active, and getting enough sleep. Keeping meals and bedtimes the same can help too.
When there's a lot of unknown and questioning happening, we don't necessarily feel the most calm or safe. But if we have a routine that's predictable and we know what to expect, kids feel a sense of comfort.
And while everyone's getting used to being out of school, stay away from other unnecessary stressors.
If there's something that doesn't really have to happen right now that could cause some extra stress on your child or the family, we just want to postpone that until we're a little bit further along, a little bit more settled.
And Baumstein says, don't forget to make time for fun.
Sometimes it feels like we don't have time for that. But those things actually make us feel more connected and more hopeful about the future, too.
For Health Minute, I'm Mandy Gaither.
Atlantic hurricane season officially kicks off today. The NOAA has said this year will have 12 to 17 named storms. Of those, 5 to 9 could become hurricanes. Forecasters at Colorado State are calling for a slightly below normal season. This year could be unpredictable, but there's also near record warm ocean temperatures, which fuel storms. Already, the Hurricane Center is watching an area in the eastern Gulf of Mexico for tropical development, and I'm sure meteorologist Matt can tell you more about that.
Absolutely. That's what we're here to talk about right about now. We are looking at the system right here that as of 2 o'clock today, on the first day of the storm season, potentially can become Arlene by tonight or tomorrow. A couple of models are strengthening up. The good news for us is that it's going to be tracking south and then across Florida and out into the Atlantic. And shall we go to a break? Yes, let's go to a break and I'll have all that coming up for you in just a moment. Welcome back, everybody. We are, of course, looking at the summer-like weather over our area. I say summer-like because summer officially begins in June 21st, but it doesn't mean anything to us around here. It's South Texas. We get warm. 87 right about now. Feels like 93. Winds are fairly light at 17 miles an hour. We had a few clouds, very pretty little cloud cover, and you notice that the Doppler is picking up some moisture in those clouds, but it just wasn't enough to actually cool anybody down. Most of Texas is on the sunny and hot stuff, of course, except for far north Texas, the Panhandle. There's Lubbock. You can see that big cluster of storms. Looks like it's headed toward Mineral Wells, Wichita Falls, and maybe even eventually Dallas later tonight. But of course, the big story is that today, June 1st, is the beginning of the Atlantic hurricane season, and this is Future Tracker. In other words, we're going forward here. Future Tracker looks at the dry line and predicts that another area of storms developing here. High pressure is what's keeping us away from any significant rain. I mean, the moisture of the sun there may build up as cloud cover, but just doesn't have enough lift. It has basically sinking air to allow it to go. But then here it is, folks. It would be really weird if on the first day of tropical storm season, we get a tropical storm. Because usually June is too soon. July, stand by. August, you must. But if it were, then if it's going to be an unpredictable season, this is off to an unpredictable start. We were convinced that this was not a tropical system, yet it organized and it is widening, and this is where it's going to be by the time we get to Saturday and Sunday. All of the computer models take it to the south. You can see it right about there. And 2 of the 8 computer models that I look at have it getting up to 40-mile-an-hour wind speed. Right now, it's 30-mile-an-hour clockwise winds around the system. They're all in pretty good agreement that it's going to drop south to Havana and then come up over southern Florida and then out into the Atlantic. But that it become a named storm would be even more unpredictable than unpredictable can be. And the reason why it's following that curve is because the upper winds, as you can see right about here, these are basically the railroad lines that the clouds and the storms are going to follow. So it'll dip down, get caught in these winds, and then start moving across and out into the Atlantic. So it may be Arlene. It's not expected to be a huge storm, although it is heavy rainfall for Florida and Cuba. And you're not going to believe this one. Some of the islands in the Caribbean are waiting for rain, okay? But I wanted to show you this. Here we are, June. See, and then, oh, can we drop that logo there? June is right about here. July, August, September the 10th is the peak of the storm season, and then it dropping off dramatically to by October and November it's over. But to then begin here, and what happens here? Good question, huh? Well, that's why we get into this predicting business, trying to figure out what's going to happen. And here's the other thing that's very important to you and me and everybody else. Water temperatures were already in the mid-80s. 81, 82, it's ripe and ready to go for storm season. But 84, 85 is very warm. And so that's part of the equation that I've put in and predict a lot more than the storm session that everybody else put up. I'm expecting about 22 storms. A few little showers beginning over the weekend, otherwise hot and humid, temperatures running about 90 degrees. That's your 7-day forecast. We have a QR code. Please scan that, put crossroadstoday.com on your phone and take us wherever you need to go. We'll toss it back to James and Karina.
Mac, thank you. Coming up next on 25 News Now at 5, we'll take a look at Wall Street. Plus, JP Morgan is shutting down 25% of First Republic branches.
Taking a look at your stocks, the Dow rising 153 points, the S&P 500 gaining 42 points, and the Nasdaq up 165 points. Oil up $2.01, closing at $70.10 a barrel. JP Morgan Chase announced it's closing a quarter of its First Republic Bank branches. The company acquired the bank after the government seized it earlier this year in the second biggest banking failure in U.S. history. First Republic only has 84 branches and caters to mostly wealthy clients. The bank did not specify which branches will close. JP Morgan says about 100 affected employees will be given transition assignments for 6 months.
Workers at Dollar General are demanding stronger safety and health protections. They rallied outside headquarters in Tennessee ahead of the company's annual shareholder meeting. The employees say Dollar General is failing to take precautions to prevent violence in its stores. The nonprofit group Gun Violence Archive reports since 2014, 49 people were killed at Dollar General stores. Workers are asking for additional staff, paid time off, and compensation for mental health resources after dangerous incidents.
Alrighty, stay with us. We'll take one last look at your forecast with Mac. Plus, the STEM Middle School Viper Band kicked off the 3rd annual Summer Drum and Drumstick Camp. We want to invite you to experience our digital streaming service, Crossroads Today Plus. You can find it on your connected TV through Amazon, Fire TV, Roku, Apple TV, Android TV, and on your cell phone. Just search Crossroads Today Plus. The STEM Middle School Viper Band is meeting for the Summer Drum and Drumstick Camp.
This is the 3rd annual camp for 7th, 8th, and 9th grade students. The camp is free and for Victoria ISD band students. Last year, the camp attracted 12 students. This year, 23 students are participating.
Ooh,
Good
look
job.
at those kids right out of
It looks
school
familiar to me
camp.
because my son was in the band and we had a trap set at home, and
Sounds
you know what
familiar.
I always say? Well, at least we know where he is.
Right.
Making noise.
All right,
That's
well, Mac,
awesome.
what about for the kids not in drum camp and outside at the
Well,
park?
you know, I bet the kids would rather be going to school because it's cool there and you get lunch every day. I loved it. I was rather be in school during the summer than, well, okay.
But you can't beat like a pool day.
Oh, well, okay.
Over a math class,
beat a pool
geometry
day.
class.
If we can go find a pool, let's go jump in because that's the best place to be for the next few months, actually. We're looking at very summer-like weather here. It's exactly where we're supposed to be, 90 degrees through the next few days. As we get into Sunday, Monday, a slight chance of a little afternoon shower activity, but this is not a cooling shower nor a thunderstorm to worry about. And of course, we'll be tracking what's going on in the Gulf. We may have potential of tropical depression number 2 become tropical storm Arlene overnight, and we'll certainly be here to watch it for you.
Thank you, Mac. Thank you for being with us. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Crossroads Today.
That's right, and we hope to see you back here tonight for 25 News Now at 6. World News Tonight with David Muir is up next.